Thanks for joining us on Arirang News. I'm Kim Dami in Seoul. South Korean President Yoon and his U.S. counterpart Joe Biden met on the sidelines of the NATO summit and warned any North Korean nuclear attack would be met with an overwhelming and decisive response. To do that, Seoul's advanced conventional strategy and U.S. nuclear assets will be combined to deter nuclear weapons coming from the north. The minimum hourly wage will be raised to 10,030 Korean won next year, up 1.7% from the current hourly rate. This is the first time the minimum wage has reached above the 10,000 won mark. The U.S. Consumer Price Index dropped 0.1% from May, which helped to slow the annual rate of inflation to 3% from 3.3% in May. The better-than-expected inflation report further raised hopes of a possible September rate cut. President Yoon sat down with more than 10 leaders on the sidelines of the NATO summit. One of them was U.S. President Joe Biden, where the two sides signed a new guideline for nuclear deterrence on the Korean peninsula that increases South Korea's involvement in the operation. Kim Do-yeon reports.
President Yoon and U.S. President Joe Biden welcomed the signing of Seoul and Washington's guidelines on nuclear deterrence and operations on the Korean peninsula, opening doors to, quote, conventional nuclear integration between the two countries. This came on Thursday during a bilateral meeting between the two leaders at the sidelines of the NATO summit in Washington, D.C.
Conventional nuclear integration means combining nuclear and conventional weapons. In other words, U.S. nuclear assets and South Korea's advanced conventional strategy will be combined to deter and respond to North Korea's nuclear weapons.
This also indicates that U.S. nuclear assets that can deter North Korea's nuclear threats will be deployed to missions on the Korean peninsula during both peacetime and wartime. Also, South Korea will be involved in decision-making processes of nuclear deterrence operations, whereas before all decisions were made by the U.S. Since the two countries first established the Nuclear Consultative Group last year, 2 rounds of training have already been provided to South Korean personnel for a better understanding of U.S. nuclear operations.
Through the adoption of these joint guidelines, a comprehensive Korea-U.S. integrated deterrence system has been established. This elevates the Korea-U.S. alliance, which has traditionally been based on conventional forces, to a truly nuclear-based alliance.
Further bolstering South Korea's security cooperation with like-minded countries, Yoon also met with the leaders of the United Kingdom, Norway, Poland, and Luxembourg on Thursday before leaving for Seoul. These sideline meetings were part of more than 10 that Yoon squeezed in during his 2-day trip to Washington, D.C. While security was largely a shared theme for the meetings, President Yoon discussed economic cooperation with talking points customized for each nation, such as nuclear energy cooperation with the Czech Republic and Sweden, as well as defense industry cooperation with Germany.
President Yoon emphasized to President Pavel that South Korea possesses the world's best construction capabilities and overwhelming price competitiveness. He stressed that if South Korea is selected as the contractor, it would significantly contribute to the development of the nuclear power sector in the Czech Republic.
Other key industries discussed with European partners were critical minerals and semiconductor production. The top office says that the bilaterals were used to, quote, reinforce the stepping stones for the nation's companies, and it also added that it hopes that these face-to-face opportunities lead to a boost in the nation's economy and ultimately improve the daily living of the people in South Korea. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News, Washington, D.C.
And President Yoon was a leading voice in calling for cross-regional cooperation between the Indo-Pacific and Atlantic countries amid Russia and North Korea's military cooperation. Our correspondent Oh Soo-young tells us more.
South Korea will double its non-lethal support for Ukraine and increase its military cooperation with NATO as President Yoon Suk-yeol issues an urgent call to counter Russia and North Korea's military threat to Europe and the Indo-Pacific. On Thursday, the South Korean leader attended the annual NATO summit for the 3rd consecutive year, along with other Indo-Pacific partner countries, Japan, Australia and New Zealand, as the so-called IP4. Speaking at the session for NATO allies and partners, President Yoon said that value-based cooperation between NATO and the Indo-Pacific is an urgent call of the times to uphold global freedom and prosperity after Russia and North Korea last month forged a treaty on military and economic cooperation. According to US officials, Pyongyang has already supplied Moscow with around 11,000 containers of ammunition. Yoon said that it is due to enablers like North Korea that the Ukraine war has been lengthened and warned that military and economic support from Russia to North Korea would exacerbate security threats to the Korean Peninsula and the Indo-Pacific region. He stressed the need for overwhelming deterrence and also called for the power of cooperation between the Indo-Pacific and Europe to establish peace in Ukraine and to support its reconstruction efforts. In this regard, Yoon announced South Korea will double its contribution to the NATO-Ukraine Trust Fund in 2025 to $24 million, up from $12 million this year. While Yoon said on Monday that South Korea could provide lethal support to Kyiv depending on the level of Moscow and Pyongyang's military cooperation, the NATO Trust Fund provides non-lethal military supplies to Ukraine. South Korea and NATO will also increase information sharing regarding North Korea-made weapons and those used against Ukraine, helping them discuss more elaborate countermeasures to the Russian-North Korea axis. Seoul and Brussels will further ramp up military interoperability through the mutual recognition of airworthiness certification. The South Korean leader and NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg welcomed these developments as they met on Thursday morning.
NATO's airworthiness certificate officially recognizes the flight safety of South Korea's domestically certified aircraft. South Korea is the first Asian country to sign such an agreement with Brussels. The certification is expected to facilitate aircraft exports and accelerate defense cooperation between the two sides in the aviation sector.
As Yoon gathered with other IP4 leaders, the minilateral group jointly condemned the Russia-North Korea treaty as a grave threat to peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific and Europe. They also met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and offered their united support for Ukraine's sovereignty. Based on their value-based solidarity, the South Korean leader further suggested the IP4 also expand their scope of cooperation to address the global south, maritime security, cybersecurity, non-proliferation and counter-terrorism.
Through participation in the NATO summit, South Korea has enhanced its own security as well as global security cooperation. NATO's focus on the role of IP4, especially South Korea, has been emphasized, and many leaders resonated with President Yoon's remarks, highlighting the need for cooperation with Seoul to strengthen solidarity between the Indo-Pacific region and the Atlantic.
Going forward, with the boundaries blurring between Indo-Pacific and Euro-Atlantic security in the face of new complex threats and challenges, Seoul and Washington officials say they hope to institutionalize the cooperation between NATO and IP4 countries, building on their flagship projects on supporting Ukraine, cyber defense and artificial intelligence. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News, Washington, D.C.
The domestically developed Bigung guided missile is set to undergo a final test conducted by the Pentagon in Hawaii on Friday local time. This makes South Korea a step away from securing a historic arms deal with the world's largest defense market, the U.S. Our defense correspondent Choi Min-jung reports.
South Korea is on the brink of clinching its first ever defense export deal with the U.S. The country's Bigung Poniard-guided rocket system, developed by defense company LIG Next One in cooperation with the Agency for Defense Development, is scheduled to be test-fired in waters off Hawaii on Friday local time, on the sidelines of the Rim of the Pacific exercise.
This is the last in a series of recent successful tests conducted by the U.S. Defense Department.
The foreign comparative test is aimed to see whether foreign weapons satisfy valid defense requirements for use in the U.S. Success would mark a significant milestone as it would open the door for exports, representing the first time a complete South Korean-made weapon system is integrated into Washington's arsenal.
This will serve as an opportunity for the world to once again recognize the excellence of South Korea's guided weapons.
The Bigung is a 70mm low-cost guided imaging rocket that can be fired from land, sea, and air. It's known for its cost-effectiveness and ability to accurately hit multiple targets at once. U.S. Chief of Naval Operations Admiral Lisa Franchetti, who reportedly has a great interest in the Bigung, visited the South Korean Navy's vessel the Cheonjabong on Thursday to take a closer look at the weapon before the launch. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News, Hawaii.
The U.S. Consumer Price Index for June was released on Thursday, showing a surprising decline in inflation. The monthly inflation figures dipped in June for the first time in more than 4 years, while its 12-month rate was at the lowest level in more than 3 years. Now, the latest data raises expectations that a rate cut could happen in September. Lee Seung-jae has more.
The U.S. Consumer Price Index in June rose 3% on year, a smaller increase compared to 3.3% recorded the month before. The latest data released by the U.S. Labor Department on Thursday also marked a third straight month of declines, falling below market expectation of 3.1%. On month, however, prices fell by 0.1% in June, recording an on-month decrease for the first time in 4 years and driving speculation of interest rate cuts. The core CPI, which excludes the volatile food and energy costs, rose 0.1% on month and 3.3% from a year ago. The figures also beat the market expectation of a 0.2% and 3.4%, which had been forecast. The on-year increase for the core CPI was also the smallest since April 2021. On the back of the newly released data, the Chicago Mercantile Exchange FedWatch, which predicts interest rate policies, raised the possibility of the U.S. Fed lowering its key rates by 0.25 percentage points in September to more than 80%. While the U.S. Central Bank's policymakers target inflation at 2% annually, the latest CPI data provides an extra push for a rate cut come September. The U.S. CPI peaked above 9% in June 2022, leading to months of interest rate hikes that finally ended in July 2023. Since then, the U.S. Fed has kept its benchmark interest rate unchanged in the range of 5.25 to 5.50%. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The minimum hourly wage in South Korea next year has surpassed the 10,000 won threshold for the first time. But the actual size of the increase was the second smallest since the minimum wage first introduced. Lee Soo-jin reports.
South Korea has now entered the era of the 10,000 won minimum hourly wage. The Minimum Wage Commission on Friday voted to set the minimum wage at 10,030 Korean won, or around $7.30 at the current exchange rate. For someone who works 40 hours a week, this brings the monthly minimum pay to around 2.09 million won. It is an increase of 1.7% from this year's minimum hourly wage of 9,860 won. While this is the first time since the minimum wage was first introduced in 1988 that it has entered the 10,000 won range, the rise is actually the second smallest after the 1.5% increase in 2021. The decision was made by the Minimum Wage Commission, consisting of representatives from businesses, labor, and the general public in 53 days, almost half of the time that it took last year when negotiations took a record 110 days. But the new wage plan was not agreed upon unanimously, as in its final proposal, the labor side suggested 10,121 and the business side 10,031. The proposal from the business side won, with 14 votes to the labor side's 9. As many as 3 million people are expected to be impacted by this decision next year, according to the Labor Ministry. From the labor side, the Federation of Korean Trade Unions expressed its dissatisfaction over the decision, and the business side is also expected to express concern about the ability of small business owners to pay their employees the higher wages. The new wage plan will be submitted by the Minimum Wage Commission to the Labor Ministry, which is expected to confirm it by August 5th. While both sides are able to request a re-evaluation by the Commission to the Labor Ministry, such a request has never been approved before, making it highly likely that the Commission's decision will go into effect from January 1st next year. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
South Korea's economy is on a recovery path with booming exports and slowing inflation. That's according to the July edition of the Finance Ministry's Economy Green Book, which was released on Friday. The monthly assessment shows that total exports for the month of June rose by more than 5% year-on-year, with outbound shipments of semiconductors jumping by 52%. The consumer price index last month also showed a slower incline than the previous month at 2.4%, which is closer to meeting the government's target of 2% inflation. The ministry vowed to continue to reinforce domestic demand and stabilize people's livelihoods. South Korean girl group NewJeans is celebrating a fifth title with sales above 1 million. According to the group's agency Adore on Thursday, the group's latest single album Supernatural surpassed 1 million in sales between its release on June 21st and the end of that month. Supernatural also marks NewJeans' official debut in Japan and features tracks designed to resonate with Japanese fans. Since their debut in July 2022, all 5 records released by the group have sold over 1 million digital and physical copies, for a total of over 7.5 million sold. And these girls will lead the charge for Korean tourism this year as a new honorary ambassadors to help promote Korean tourism worldwide. Our culture correspondent Song Yujin tells us more.
These girls will no longer just be the faces of K-pop. Meet the Korea Tourism Honorary Ambassador of 2024, NewJeans. Every year, the Culture Ministry and the Korea Tourism Organization select an ambassador to promote Korea and its culture to the world. Previous ambassadors include Emmy-winning actor Lee Jung-jae in 2023, BTS in 2022, and football star Son Heung-min in 2021.
We aim to attract 20 million overseas tourists this year. So far, we've had about 7.65 million overseas tourists. With NewJeans as our ambassador, we have high hopes that even more people will visit in the latter half of this year.
NewJeans is having a record-breaking year. They became the first K-pop act to win Group of the Year at the 2024 Billboard Women in Music Awards and the fastest non-Japanese artist to perform at the Tokyo Dome since their debut.
We're really excited to be chosen as ambassadors for promoting Korean tourism. We'll do our best to promote Korea's unique charms and attractions.
But their success isn't the only reason why they were chosen. More than 1/3 of inbound tourists to Korea last year were 30 years old or younger, and many were drawn to Korea through K-content.
NewJeans is a young group with many young fans overseas. We are targeting millennials and Gen Z in regions like China, Southeast Asia, and Japan.
Kicking off their one-year term as ambassadors, NewJeans filmed the Koreans Korea campaign videos. The 2 videos highlight some of the most popular activities among locals, such as personal color analysis, esports, and enjoying Korean street food at traditional markets.
I highly recommend staying in a hanok, a traditional Korean house. You'll experience its beauty while being surrounded by nature.
I suggest trying Korean summer dishes like samgyetang soup and naengmyeon, the cold noodles.
These videos will be screened on billboards at more than 10 major tourist landmarks worldwide, including New York City's Times Square and across Paris during the Paris 2024 Olympics. Song Yujin, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at the latest news in the world now. The United Nations General Assembly has voted on a resolution demanding that Russia withdraw its military from Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. The UN's 193-member General Assembly adopted a resolution in New York on Thursday with 99 votes in favor, 9 against, and 60 abstentions, demanding that Russia urgently withdraw its military and other unauthorized personnel from Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant and return full control of the facilities to the Ukrainian authorities. Throughout the war, Ukraine and Russia have accused each other of aerial strikes on Europe's largest nuclear power plant. The UN resolution called for immediate cessation of the attacks by the Russian Federation against critical energy infrastructure of Ukraine due to the risk of a nuclear accident or incident at all nuclear facilities of Ukraine. Southeastern Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant was captured by Russian forces in March 2022, in the early days of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. A new United Nations report published on Thursday says that the world's population will peak in the mid-2080s at over 10 billion people. The report said that the current population of 8.2 billion will grow to 10.3 billion by the mid-2080s, and the figure is expected to return to around 10.2 billion by the end of the 21st century. At a press briefing on the World Population Prospects 2024 report, the UN Assistant Secretary General for Economic Development, Navid Hanif, said that the new data suggests the world's population in 2100 will be 6% lower, or 700 million people fewer than calculations made a decade ago. Director of the UN DESA's Population Division, John Wilmoth, said it is due to several factors, including lowering fertility levels in large countries such as China. Wilmoth also added that by 2080, persons aged 65 or older will outnumber children under age 18. Moving over to Poland, where 77 coal miners trapped following a tremor in southern Poland's Rydoltowy coal mine were rescued on Thursday. According to an official, one of the 17 miners hospitalized due to injuries died, while the search for one missing miner was suspended due to the high risk of more tremors. The spokeswoman of the mine owner, PGG, said that the accident took place at 8:16 a.m. local time on Thursday, while the Euro-Mediterranean Seismological Center recorded a magnitude 3.1 earthquake in the region near the mine at the same time. Authorities said 20 specialized teams took part in the rescue operation and faced many difficulties due to the underground tremor. Following this week's semi-final excitement, the UEFA European Championship final between England and Spain is just around the corner. Spain beat France 2-1 in Munich on Tuesday. This was followed by England's 2-1 victory with a last-minute goal against the Netherlands in Dortmund on Wednesday. Three-time Euro champions Spain and England, who have yet to win a Euro title, will face each other for the final game at the Olympiastadion in Berlin on Sunday night local time. Kim Seong, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Most of Korea swelters as monsoon rain takes a break with a heat advisory in place for the third consecutive day in the capital, although it has been bearable the last few days. However, it's going to be hotter today with that high humidity. Meanwhile, you still need to carry an umbrella. Sporadic heavy rain could come down in the afternoon along with thunderstorms with 5 to 60 millimeters in the forecast. Starting out the day under cloudy skies in most of Korea, and it should stay that way except in Gyeongsang-do provinces, where sunnier skies are in the forecast until that passing rain comes. And feels like temperatures should be higher than actual numbers, with a high of 32 degrees here in the capital and Chuncheon, Daejeon, Gwangju topping out at 31 degrees this afternoon. Monsoon rain returns to Jeju tomorrow, spreading to the rest of southern regions over the weekend. Then it's going to rain nationwide from next Tuesday. With that in mind, let's take a look at the international weather conditions.
That's all we have at this hour. Arirang News will be back at 2 p.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.